You figured it out? Yeah, okay. So today, for the live training, I'm going to be working with George. George just came in last week or earlier this week, I don't remember which. He's been here a few days. I worked him a couple of times. George is a BLM Mustang. His brand is right here. He is, I believe, 6 years old, something in that range. He is broke to ride. They have actually used him to move some cows around and I'm not sure what all, but I know that they talked about moving cows with him. And their biggest complaint with him, the biggest thing I need to work on is his steering is pretty, not very good. He steers, he got to pull hard to steer. And the other thing that I have found since he's been here is he was very pushy into my space when I first started working with him. I have worked on that. I've worked him a few times since he's been here, but this will be his first video. And I've done a lot of work with him in my space, and I've also done some work with just kind of generally him being willing to do what's asked of him. That seems to be a big, basically the root to the other problems, the steering, the being in my space. He just kind of wants to do his thing and not so much do what's asked of him. So I brushed him, gave him a little quick brush so I can get the saddle on. Next thing I'm gonna do is put the bridle on. When I'm saddling out here, I always bridle before I put the saddle on. The reason for that, you got a ear problem? He didn't give me any problem yesterday when I bridled him. I think he just don't want me touching it. It wasn't a problem yesterday. The reason for that is to kind of establish a work ethic. This is your uniform, we're going to work. So I like to put this on first. He didn't give me any issues bridling yesterday. I doubt that he has an issue going on as far as pain or a tick or anything like that, because there wasn't a problem yesterday. There, now he's chewing. I suspect that if he gives me a problem with bridling, it's going to be caused from his overall issue of just generally wanting to do what he wants to do and not wanting to do what's asked of him. So I'm going to just ask him to move his feet. I gave him a release. I petted it. I rubbed his ear. He chewed. I released. We moved, walked his feet. Now I'm going to put the bridle on. I'm going to make sure that it's adjusted probably a little bigger than it needs to be. I'd rather put it on and have to tighten it down than put it on and it be too tight. It's just a one-ear plain D-ring snaffle, nothing special about it. He's actually trying to take the whole thing in his mouth. Let me have it back. There we go, good boy. Took the bit really good. Be easy with his ears, there we go. All right, I'm gonna rub this ear again. I need to tighten the bit, I know, but that's not what's important right now. He pulled his head away. I'm gonna address that before I adjust the bit. You have to be aware of the whole situation. Yeah, I did just put the bit in. Yeah, it was too big. Yeah, it didn't need to be tightened. But that wasn't what needed to be addressed at that moment. What needed to be addressed was the fact that he pulled his head away, and I needed to go back and address that. Bit being a little too low, not a big deal. Doesn't matter. Wouldn't want to ride with it that low, but at that point, that didn't matter. So I appreciate everybody watching live, and thanks for tuning in. This is the first video. If you missed it at the beginning, this is the first video I've done with this horse. This is George, and I have worked him a few times, but this is the first video we've done. So now let's address putting the saddle on him. just like I said a minute ago, I'm going to address the issue at hand. If he gives me a problem saddling, I'm going to address that issue. I'm not, okay, we're going to get saddled, we're going to make this happen. That's not necessarily what any part of training should be about. It all should be about not just getting the saddle on, but how he takes the saddle. That's what's the important part. Doing much better than did yesterday. Give me a lot of problems yesterday. You wasn't paying attention, were you? So now, he startled right there when I put the saddle over. I could have hit him with the stirrup. I'm not exactly sure. That could have caused the jump. Didn't. He hasn't generally been scared of the saddle before. I don't think that is an issue. If I thought that was an issue, I'd back up and throw the saddle up there again. Let me get back over this side. Now once I start saddling or tightening the saddle, I have to get it tight enough that it won't fall off. I can't stop halfway. I can't stop and the saddle be in a position where it's not going to stay on. That would cause a wreck, and that would cause all kind of problems later. So I'm going to go ahead and get it tight enough it won't fall off. Kind of lean back just a little bit there. Stop there. I'd like to get another hole, but for right now, let's just see if he'll move his feet. One step, there we go. So he tightened his body up a little bit when I got it to the point that it's at now. I'd really like it to be a little tighter, but instead of going on and getting that one more hole, because it is tight enough, it's not going to fall off at this point. It's not there. See, I got 2 holes right there, easy. Where if I would have tightened it, that I need to address. See that foot step to me? That is him challenging my space, telling me he's not happy with me tightening the saddle. I'm gonna back him back that foot back up. There we go. Now let's walk forward again. Cat photo bombing again too. I don't know what it is. Every time I start video and that cat comes and uses the arena. So let's, I'm gonna put the lunge line on him. Let's see, let's walk over here and see if we got any questions that I need to answer while he's just kind of chilling to the saddle. What's his name? His name is George. A lot of people don't know, I used to ride and show jumping horses. Not to a real high level, but I did a pretty good bit. Had a good time doing it. And my personal jumping horse, his name was George. So had a really good time. That was a long time ago. That horse was a solid paint. This is a BLM Mustang. So now I walked him just a little bit. I'm gonna check my saddle. Make sure it's still, he's turning his lip, trying to lip at me. He's still telling me he's not happy with the program. Let's go ahead and get another wrap on the girth strap, cinch strap. And I got another hole tighter. Probably tight enough I could get on, but right now, I just want to do a little bit of groundwork with him. So his general issue is being okay, or the general issue is owner talked about, is just being willing to be steered. And as I've been working with him, I've noticed he's just generally not real willing to do what's asked of him. So instead of getting on his back and seeing with his face, we're going to put him to work. Instead of getting on his back and working the steering specifically, some problems can be started working on the ground. Some need to be worked on the saddle. This particular issue, I'm going to start with some groundwork. Get it started, getting it started, getting it improved, and we'll go from there. Just take this lead line and just tie it like that. Pick up my lunge whip. I'm going to ask with my left hand, tick, and then the whip is demand. Ask, tell, demand. Watch his body position and the things that he's going to do to try to not do what I'm asking him to do. I'll point them out as they happen. When he first came here, he didn't want to work through the mud, so we had to address that. I've had one load of dirt delivered already this morning, 4 in here. It's sitting right outside there. We're gonna be delivering some more. So might see the dump truck show back up while we're doing this video. So I've just gone around a couple times, just asking him to go. Now let's change directions. Swap hands, meet him at the wall, 2 eyes, send. I asked with my hand, I told with my tick, I demanded with the whip. Now when I went to the whip went more towards his shoulder because of his angle that he was at me. I wasn't necessarily wanting to just send him forward. I wanted to send the shoulder forward because the shoulder didn't complete the turn. Let's change directions again. Ask. Better. Didn't have to go to demand. It's that willingness that I'm after. That is the start of the willingness on the ground and will lead to the willingness in the saddle. Change directions again. I'm not lunging him fast. I'm not trying to get air out of him. I'm trying to work his brain. Trying to get his brain to engage and be willing to do what I ask. Change directions again. Good boy. So I'm going to, in just a minute, we'll do another turn or two. I've made nice progress here. Next step I'm going to do is ground drive him so that we see if we can get some steering left and right besides just turning. This is willingness. The ground driving is specifically steering. And if he gets to a point where he looks like he's ready, I'll get on his back. I always let the horse to a point. I have the parts that I want to work on, and I'm looking for improvement. Exactly at what point I stop is going to depend on the horse. See, that's nice improvement. Much, much better than yesterday. Much, much better. I don't know really much about his background at all. I'm not even sure what state he came out of. I could look up his number and look it up and see. But he is very large for a Mustang. Probably one of the biggest Mustangs I've ever had in training. They typically are small, 14, 14.2, something like that. He's every bit of 15 hands. I'm only about 5'5", so a lot of people assume I'm bigger, and it kind of messes with the perspective of how big the horse is. All right, so let's ask him to stop. I'm not going to send him the other way. That's Madame right there. I think he stopped more because of Madame than me, but that's okay. I always want to close this last horse length myself. I want to go to the horse. I don't ever want the horse to close that last horse length, that last 6 feet or so. That's how I do it. I want them to stop, acknowledge me, and then I will close that space. I feel like if I do it that way, then it's always black and white that it was my decision. I think a lot of people will let the horse close that last horse length, and then they're like, well, I was going to let the horse do it, but it wasn't really the horse's choice, it was the rider's choice. The horse allowed it because they were going to let them do it, and I don't care for that. So Mustangs are not supposed to be big. Well, I wouldn't say that they're not supposed to be big, but they're typically not big. There are always exceptions to everything, but the ones that I've worked with are typically 14 hands, 14.2, something like that. They're typically just not big. I am sure when you look back at the history of Mustangs, I mean, some of them go all the way back to the Spanish horses. Some of them were horses that became feral or turned loose over the years. I'm sure some of them were riding horses, some of them were wagon horses. So there are some bigger horses in the genetics, but there's the cat is in the mounting block now. Trying to steal the show. See if I can turn it. Whoop, nope, went out. I was going to turn it so you could see. So at this point, what I want to do, I don't know if he's ever been ground driven before. So I'm preparing him for that. I want to make sure he's not worried about the lines around his legs. This is also something that I need for trail riding. If I'm out riding in the woods someplace and he gets a vine or something caught around his leg or around his tail, I want him to not panic about it. So it has a training use now for working my steering, but it also has a practical purpose later. There, he got pretty relaxed to that pretty quick. Also has a practical purpose later. So let's start swinging a little bit. Now when I'm doing this kind of thing, where I stand is really important. I don't want to stand here. If the end of that rope goes around and hits him on that side and spooks him and he comes that way, I don't want to be in the position of where his body is going to come. I get a lot of people that ask how to be safe with training horses. And everybody that I know that trains horses has been hurt at some point. It's part of the job. But a big part of keeping you safe if you're training horses is just knowing where to stand, where to be. You'll always see me, or most of the time, depending on what I'm doing, I'm up here by the horse's head. It's going to do a couple of things. I'm establishing some leadership here. I'm also in a good position for get out of his way if he was to spook. There's always, I wouldn't say there's good places to stand, but there's always places to stand that are less dangerous than other places. Taken to this pretty nice. Notice how I started doing this and started giving him a job. He's not mouthy with me anymore. He's not pushing into my space near as bad as what he was. I'll turn him around and work the other side. He's more has a, looking at all this mentally as, what do you want me to do now? What are you going to ask me to do now? And that's what I want of a horse in training. I want them, their mental state to be, what do you want me to do now? What's the next thing? And as long as you have that mental state, you got a mind you can work with. A lot of people get in trouble working their horses because they get caught up with things like the nippiness with his mouth, like he had to begin with. He was pretty nippy the first couple times I worked with him. Never did anything about it. Not a single thing. There was because he was nippy because he was trying to take charge, be the leader, and tell me what to do. I just put him to work, it went away. You have to be smart about what you decide to work on. All these horses are sent to me to train to work something, and I do my best to give that owner return for their money. That's what the horses are sent here for. And part of that, giving them a return on their money, is knowing what to work on. I can work on things that I know needs to be worked on to progress the horse. I could work on things that I know is just going to go away, like the mouthiness, with just work, just giving them a job. So I try to be smart about what I work on. Pretty much don't care. So now the next thing to do, now that he's not scared of the line, see what we got for steering. And again, I'm going to stand up by his head. I'm going to throw it over him. If he spooks away, I don't want to be in the lane where he would go. And this is all attached to the halter. Everything I'm going to do today is working off the halter. He's carrying the bit, but I'm not asking him to do anything. We're off the bit. Let's see if he'll follow his nose to the right. Follow the pressure that way. See how now he's fighting the pressure. I'm just going to hold the pressure. I'm not really going to get into a big fight with him. I'm going to let him figure out that the release is that way. There you go. Good boy. Not going to send you. I'm just going to let him figure out where the release to the pressure is. All he's trying to do there, he's not necessarily trying to say no. He's not necessarily trying to be bad. I mean, he could be, but that's not what that was. Some of them will do that. All he was trying to do was figure out, what am I supposed to do to get the release from the pressure? Let's see. I think that was left or right, rather. Throw the line over. And all this I want to teach before I get in the saddle. When I get in the saddle, I want the horse to already know how to turn left, right, stop, and back up. I know that they have ridden him. I know that he already has the foundation of that, but he's resistant to it. Much better that time. I got a mind that's wanting to work, a mind that's looking for the right answers. Good boy. Let's do the other side. Then I'll come over there and see if I got any questions to answer. If you do have any questions about anything I'm doing, put it up there, and I'll answer them best I can. And Melinda's going to help me watch for them so that if I miss it, now we'll go a different direction. In a lot of ways, I'm starting over. Not going to fuss because it may not be as good as the other direction. Good job. Again, I'd like him to stop. Let me close in the last 6 feet. Good boy. Good boy. I get a lot of questions asking, why do I not pet them more than I do? Why do I not tell them good boy? A lot of what more novice horse people think of as reward is reward to a person. If you do a job, you like being told in words, you did a good job. With the horse, the release of the pressure is the reward. So that, I don't have to go pat on him and tell him good boy for him to know he did a good job. That does help to reinforce it, but because the pressure went away, he knows he did a good job. Let's go pet on him now. Looks like the cat's eating my brush. That's the same cat that ate my shoestrings. I ended up buying all of that size, that length shoestrings that Academy had. He would chew the loops. How old is he? I think he is 6. I believe 6 or 7. I don't remember exactly. I think he is 6. How long a lunge whip, horsemanship flag do you use? I think this lunge whip is about 4.5 or 5 feet. And I get a lot of people ask me, why do I not use a flag? I do sometimes use a flag, but as everything progresses, you just saw how everything that I've done so far, one thing progresses off of another. I could use a flag, but by using a whip, this thing, sacking him out to the whip, progressed to steering him with the long line, with the lunge line. Everything progresses from one thing to the next. So I could use a flag. I have nothing against a flag, but sacking him out and getting him comfortable with the flag does not lead me to the next step. It's the only reason I don't use it. Nothing wrong with it. It's just doesn't help me get to the next step. If I use a flag, get him used to a flag, it sacks him out, it does some good things, but it doesn't help me with steering, it doesn't help me with driving. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to attach a second line, and we're going to start steering. Ask him to go, get some steering, and see if that will transfer to the saddle. Very good learning attitude right there. If you're watching, put in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from. I know I get a lot of people from all over. I have quite a few people from Australia that will watch on the rerun, because I think this is like in the middle of the night in Australia. I am Central Time in United States. I'm in Mississippi, right on the Gulf Coast. So now I have both lines attached to the halter. Everything I do still is going to be off of the halter. Have you seen any questions come up I need to address?
Someone asked if you use a round pin. You also have one, because since I have been learning my horse using that, because my horse is anticipating the change of direction when I change my whip. Is that okay?
So don't just think about the whip, think about what your body is doing. If your horse is anticipating because your body language is saying go the other way, that's not anticipating, that's doing what you're asking the horse to do. You don't want the horse to anticipate, but the whole point is to establish some good working habits. And if you're not telling your horse to turn, and your horse turns, keep sending him forward. It needs to be your decision. Just like I was talking about the closing in the 6 feet a minute ago. It needs to be your decision. See if we can get some forward going. So don't just think about the whip. It's all about your body position. And if your body position is saying turn, your horse is just doing what you ask him to do. Your horses in general are really good about learning the little tiny pre-cues, pre-thoughts. As soon as your brain starts to think about doing something, your body usually starts to act in little ways. Horses are really good about reading those little ways and knowing what comes next. That's what makes horses so trainable. So kind of think about what you're doing when your horse is anticipating. You don't want him to anticipate, but you do want him to react on what your body's telling him to do. So as far as a round pin, I do have a round pin over there, and I do use it some. But the thing about a round pin, it really closes in the space here as far as me driving the horse around and being able to turn left, turn right, and it just limits the space that I have. When I was starting a lot of horses, and I still do this some when I start with Bob by myself, we do it in a round pen to keep it enclosed and small. And I've started enough horses on Bob and with the pony horse I used before then, I don't even need a rider on them, but I do that out there just to keep it in a smaller area. Out here, when I have Robert helping me, we can get a lot more done a lot quicker just because we have more space. We get on the horse's back. If you get on a horse's back, to a point you want to just sit there and let them understand it, comprehend it, be okay with it. But there also reaches a point where you need to tell that horse to do something. Because if you're not telling the horse to do something, being the leader, then your horse is going to be the leader. Your horse is going to start taking over and you're going to have other problems. So you need to arrange what you're doing in a situation in a way that you're being the leader. You're giving that horse something to do. And with the way we start most horses here with Robert helping me, it just works better in this arena. When I was doing them all by myself, yeah, I was in a round pen. Any other questions?
Yes. If you get a wild horse that is hard to train, how can you get the
Okay, so I had Ace here last year. He's here now to be starter, maybe even 2 years ago, to be halter broke. And he was almost a 2-year-old, wasn't halter broke. So I did a whole video series on him, working him in the stall, getting a halter on him, and working his feet, everything that needed to be done. And one of the big keys that I talked about in that video, when you're working, getting a halter on a horse, getting the halter on is the end result, but as you're working it, what your goal is isn't necessarily the end result. Your goal is for the horse to be comfortable enough for you to put the halter on. Once you get the horse comfortable enough for that, actually putting the halter on is not a problem. So don't think of it as, pick a side. Don't think of it as, there's another dump truck coming, you'll see him dumping another load of dirt in the arena, the big arena in a minute. Don't think of it as a goal of getting the halter on. Think of it as a goal of getting your horse comfortable enough with you around the head and with you handling ropes that you can put the halter on. So I'm walking around, getting some left, getting some right. Actually not doing too bad. He's pulling just a little bit, not too awful bad. Let's go forward. I don't know what he's gonna do when that dump truck gets over there. We'll have to see. So this really seems like a pretty nice horse. He just needs to be a little softer, a little more willing. And now I'm gonna act like that dump truck ain't even there. I'm gonna ignore it. I'm gonna keep giving him something to do and expect him to take cues from me. Really important there. I'm not gonna stop. If you stop and go over there and hold him and start petting on him and say, it's okay, you're no longer being a leader and you're expressing to that horse that there is something to be worried about. If I just keep working and act like that dump truck ain't even over there, I expect him to work the same way. So far he's doing okay. I am still being his leader, still giving him something to do. You can see he's a little worried. That's okay. I don't care that he gets a little worried as long as he's still looking to me and asking me, what do I need to do? That's why I don't mind distractions. That's why I like stuff on the ground in here. Get all kind of comments telling me I need to take all these distractions away so the horse can think about me. The horse can think about me with distractions. That's what makes a good broke horse. Now he's putting his head down, I need to send him forward a little more. The horse needs to think about me and what I'm asking him to do, no matter what the distractions are. Let's turn back to the right. Turn to the right. If you turn to the right, you quit stepping on that rope. Turn to the right. There you go. About time for that tailgate on the dump truck to bang. No reaction. Good job. We usually work 8 or 10 a day. I have Robert here that helps me. He'll help me with some of the more bronchial horses. He'll work a couple. I'll work a couple. Usually I'll work 6 or 7. He'll work 3 or 4. Just kind of how the numbers are. And I am not one to take a whole bunch of horses at one time, 8 to 10. I really like to keep it around 8. Sometimes it gets to 10 horses in training. And if I get too many, I can't spend the time with them and do a good job. So I try to keep the numbers to a manageable number so that we get them all worked and do a good job.
Somebody wants to know what you would have done if you would have bolted with that.
Okay, so if he would have bolted with the dump truck, turn right. I see we got more problems turning right than we do going left. If he would have bolted, let's turn right. Let's turn right. Forward. So if he would have bolted, basically I would have just gone to lunging him. Ask him to turn left, turn right, kind of like what I did on the wall. I'm not going to try to stop him, but I'm going to be the leader. I'm going to give him something to do. Your objective with your horse should always be for your horse to ask you, what would you like me to do? So that's what I'm working towards with this horse. If he would have bolted, run off, whatever, it's not a failure. It's just an opportunity to teach something, an opportunity to work on something the horse needs to work on. Much better to the left than he is to right. Let's make another right turn here. Just like that. He kind of spooked forward at that noise. I just kind of let him go around it. Now I'm going to change directions. Give him something to do. Hey, I'm still talking to you. I am still the leader. I am still giving you something to do.
You had someone asking, do you ever have to send a horse back before the horse is safe in the wild, or do you still take the horse into the
That's going to depend on the situation. I do. If I can't get nothing done with the horse, I'm going to send it back. I'm also not going to ride a horse that we're going to get hurt on. It's not worth us getting hurt on one horse and not being able to ride the rest of the horses. That's not what we do. There are people out there that will do that. To an extent, when I first started training horses, I did that to get whatever I could get in. But at this point, that's just not worth it. There is occasionally a horse that I can't get anything done with. Not real often, but it's occasionally. And I do send that horse home. That's like, we'll talk about banks for just a minute. I'm not making a whole lot of progress with Banks. That's the one that you saw bucking when I walked out of the barn. I've got the vet coming to look over him. We're going to pull some blood work. We're going to see if anything's going on there, lacking any minerals. what I'm doing, there's no reason for it to not work. So a lot of whether I send a horse home that didn't work, a lot of it has to do with experience. I've got to know there's not many that I can't make better. And when I've got a program that I've worked for 30 years and one's not working out in the program, then I'm going to look for something else. That's like I've seen the question posted, do I require all horses to have some kind of vet check to rule out pain before they come here? Most of the horses that have a training issue have a training issue. And the ones that have a pain issue or another issue, I'll address that when they get here. Let's go forward. And you gotta use some common sense there. And you need to turn right. Turn right's the issue. Let's go forward. For somebody that hasn't trained many horses and hasn't seen horses trained started all the way through a finished show horse, they don't really know what to expect. And the first thing they want to rule out is pain someplace. Well, learning is a process. And a lot of what people see, they don't know because they don't know the process. And a lot of times what people want to check for a pain issue is a normal part of the process. Turn right again. We need to get this right turn better. Turn right again. Turn right again and go forward. So by seeing what he's doing so far, seeing where he's come, seeing how he learns, let's go forward. I'm going to be doing some more ground driving like this, work on his steering, especially to the right. And then what I'm probably going to do, I know they said they push cows with him, I'm probably going to use a cow to help the steering so that when I pull on him, it's not just a random pull that he don't really see a purpose for. It's going to be a pull to follow a cow. A pull for a purpose. And we're going to do the same thing with some boards, some cones. But for right now, I need to get this right turn a little bit better. But overall today, I've had a lot of progress in just his willingness to be told what to do. Really like that part. Really like that of his progress. Breakthrough, everything else is going to come easier. So I'm going to go ahead and unsaddle him in here. And by unsaddling him in here, it's going to do a couple of things. It's going to be a reward for doing good work. It's going to be a release of pressure. I need to be working towards unsaddling him at the wash rack, but that's not what's important right here. What's important right here is let him know he did a good job. Is there any other questions I need to answer while I'm unsaddling him?
I was screenshotting.
Okay. I can't really see the TV to see the questions, so we're going to keep working on a better system for that.
So would you say the more distracted the horse is, the more questions or requests you ask of them?
The number of questions or requests is going to be directly correspondent to what the horse is doing, where the horse's brain is. Like if I'm riding someplace and both ears are forward, I'm going to ask the horse to do something. If I'm riding and the horse is constantly has an ear back on me, not necessarily going to ask that much. It's basically like a child, and when I lose their attention, I'm going to bring their attention back to me. I'm going to redirect them and bring their attention back to me as often as I need to. As the horse gets further along, most of the time you don't have to do it very often, but I will do it as often as it takes. When you're riding, you want to ride every step as far as moving with your horse, being a partner with your horse, but you don't necessarily want to be constantly pulling them one way or another or constantly using your legs. You want to be riding, so you need to be working towards that. Take bridle off.
Someone wants to know if you have a breeding program or any of your own studs.
I do not anymore. I did have my own stud. I had a grandson of Continental King. I actually bred quite a few mares with him. Reining horse, he showed in reining, won a good bit of money. But I don't anymore. When the economy went down, it got to where it just wasn't worth. Bet thinks my horse has ulcers. To keep right. Is it okay to keep right? That depends. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. What was I saying?
The breeding.
Breeding, okay. So when the economy went down, it wasn't hardly worth having a stud because you weren't breeding it enough to justify the expense, and there's just a lot more that goes into having a stud, the liability. And that's when we actually gelded my stud. He attacked my wife, and we gelded him afterwards. And at this point, there's so many good studs out there. I don't see a reason for me to have a stud when I can go breed to all these really good studs all over the country. Nowadays with ship semen, you can ship semen all over the world and breed to any stud that you want. It's really, there's no reason to have a lot of small local studs like they used to be back in the 70s and 80s. It's just not a reason for it. As far as the ulcers and whether you should ride them or not, there's a balance there you have to maintain. You do need to clear up the ulcers. But the other part of that is if you just stop riding him, clear up the ulcers, go back to riding him without the ulcer medicine, you're probably going to bring the ulcers back. So it's a matter of getting his body, getting his stomach comfortable enough with the work so that the stress of the work doesn't bring the ulcers back. And the other part of that is, if he's stressed with the work, you need to see why he's stressed with the work, and you need to look at your program. Maybe you need to adjust your feed program a little bit. It has become really, really popular lately to feed these really highly dense feeds. So that you only have to feed a small amount, and a lot of people have gone to these really dense feeds, and they feed a small amount of that. They feed some alfalfa, or they feed some sort of forage, and they're getting a lot of calories in the horse in a really dense way. But I don't buy all that. That horse needs to be bringing in food for hours. I feed a less dense feed, and I feed a lower quality hay, which means I do need to get more quantity into the horse. But because I'm getting more quantity into the horse always has stuff in his stomach to absorb the stomach acids. What is the most abusive bit people use on the horse? Bit don't matter. It's the hands. I'll say that over and over. There's no such thing as an abusive bit, just abusive hands. Every bit has a purpose, and the unknowledge person without knowledge is what makes that bit harmful. It's not the bit; it's the hands using it. But you need to have food.
You're live. We're back.
We're back. Okay. I lost my live feed. I don't know.
The question was, what is the? Hold on. It went up. How long were the ones you just used?
I think those are 25. I don't really have a preference as far as how long. I'm more concerned about how they feel in my hand than I am how long they are. How long they are don't really matter. how they feel in my hand. That's what I like. That's my preference. Well, can it hurt the horse's mouth inside of it? Oh yeah, all of them can. Every bit can. You can take the snaffle bit I just put on him and make his mouth bleed. Has nothing to do with the bit. It has to do with the hands that are using it. And that's all I'm going to say about that. People want to talk bad about certain bits. It's not the bit. It's the hands using it. And that's just all there is to that. I think we're going to go ahead and close this video out. Again, this is George. I'll be doing more videos of him. Until next time, thank you for watching. Morning.